I'm a simple man. I work 40 hours a week in a cubicle where I argue with Excel spreadsheets about pivot tables. My job title is Senior Financial Analyst, which is corporate speak for the guy who makes the graphs pointy. I pay my taxes. I mow my lawn on Saturdays. And at 5:30 p.m., I like to walk out my front door in my boxers and a faded "Accounting Our Numbers Don't Lie" t-shirt and shoot a $20 basketball at a $150 hoop. It's not the NBA. It's not a Rucker Park streetball tournament. It's me, 43 years old, with a slightly less than functional left knee, trying to hit a free throw. The hoop is my decompression chamber. The thump, thump, thump of the ball on the asphalt, the metallic clank of a missed shot, which is most of them. The satisfying thwack of the frayed nylon net. That's my Zen garden. That sound tells my brain the workday is over and the spreadsheet can go to hell. This, apparently, was a war crime. My neighborhood is, for the most part, normal. We're in a standard cookie-cutter suburb in middle of nowhere, USA. We do the wave when we drive past each other. We borrow sugar. We complain about the humidity. And then there's the house to my left. My house is beige. Hers is also beige. But her beige is aggressive. Her name is probably Barbara or Susan, but I've never used it. In my head, she is, and always will be, Karen. She's one of those people who believes community means a group of people who exist to follow my specific, unspoken rules. She wears a visor at all times, even when it's cloudy. She power walks at 5 a.m., and you can hear the slap, slap, slap of her brand new Nikes hitting the pavement like she's trying to punish it. I've seen her glare at my perfectly edged lawn. I once saw her pick up a single, wind-blown leaf that had landed on her driveway and march it back over to my yard, dropping it like it was a severed head. But we'd never really spoken. Not until the day of the letter. I came home from work, tie already loosened, keys in hand, dreaming of that first thump of the ball. Taped to my front door was a single, stark white sheet of paper. It was laminated. Who laminates a complaint letter? This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment, "Hey, can you keep it down?" note, scribbled on a napkin. This was premeditated. This was planned. This was a document. This implied drafts. This implied peer review. I could picture her in her kitchen, feeding this piece of paper into a $30 Amazon Basics laminator, the heat sealing in the spite, making it waterproof and, apparently, permanent. It felt official, like I was being served. My hands were actually shaking a little as I peeled the tape off. The title, in bold 16-point Times New Roman, read, "Official Complaint, Auditory and Aesthetic Nuisance." I read it, standing right there on my porch. It was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive corporate speak. It mentioned incessant auditory disruption, non-standard neighborhood fixtures, and potential impact on property values. It was signed, "Your Concerned Neighbors," but the laminate was so thick I could practically see her fingerprints all over it. I stood there for a minute, the plastic sheet stiff in my hand. Then I went inside, put my briefcase down, walked back out, and bounced the basketball. Hard. Thump, thump, thump. 2 seconds later, her front door opened. "Excuse me," she yelled. I caught the ball. "Hey, Karen, got your memo." I held up the laminated sheet, which reflected the setting sun directly into her eyes. "My name is Barbara," she snapped, which I immediately filed away and discarded. "And clearly you didn't read it. That sound is precisely the problem." "Barbara Karen, look," I said, trying my best to be the reasonable one. I get it. You don't like the noise. I can stop bouncing it after, say, 9 p.m.? No problem. She actually scoffed. A real, genuine, "How dare you breathe my air" scoff. It's not the time, it's the sound. That incessant thump, thump, thump. And the clanging of the rim. It's a neighborhood eyesore. It lowers property values. It's a basketball hoop, I said, pointing. It's been there for 3 years. My property value seems fine. Yours seems fine. The Zillow estimate is actually up 4%. I shouldn't have said that. Her eyes narrowed. I have a list of 7 other neighbors who agree with me. It's unsightly. It's common. And I'll be speaking to the city about the noise ordinance. This broke my brain. A noise ordinance? For a basketball? At 5:30 in the afternoon? Are you going to call the cops on the ice cream truck too? She gave me a smile that was all teeth. A smile that said, I have been the manager in this situation my entire life. We'll see, she said. Then she turned, marched back inside, and her door clicked shut. I stood there, alone on my driveway, holding my basketball and a piece of indestructible plastic hatred. I tried to crumple the letter, but the lamination fought back. It just bent, then sprang back, perfectly flat. I walked to the hoop, took a shot, and sunk it. Thwack! The war had begun. My first move was one of goodwill. I was going to be the bigger man. I was going to be Gandhi, if Gandhi had a decent jump shot and a mortgage. I was going to de-escalate. My first stop? Amazon. I typed in, "quiet basketball net." Apparently this is a thing. I spent $40 on something called the Whisper Weave Pro, which was made of heavy-duty, sound-dampening nylon. The product description promised a satisfying swish, not a harsh clank. It was military grade, or so they claimed. I installed it. The next day, 5:30 p.m., I went out. Thump, thump, thump. Swish. It was quieter. I mean, maybe a little. It was less of a thwack and more of a shp. I felt pretty good about it. I was a problem solver, a good neighbor. The next morning, there was another laminated letter taped to my door. Subject, continued auditory disruption. This one noted that, while the net-related high-frequency noise has been marginally reduced, the primary source percussive impact, the bouncing, remains an unacceptable violation of neighborhood peace. She used subject, She was treating our neighborhood dispute like a corporate email chain. I half expected her to CC a supervisor. Fine. She wanted to escalate? I'd escalate to full compliance. My next purchase made me sick to my stomach. It was a foam basketball. I'm not talking about a little Nerf ball. This was a regulation-size, high-density foam ball designed for silent, indoor dribbling. It cost $35, which is $15 more than my actual, perfectly good rubber ball. The box arrived. I took it outside. I looked at Karen's house. Her curtains twitched. I bounced the ball. There was no thump. There was just a puff. A sad, wheezing puff of air and foam hitting asphalt. It was like bouncing a giant marshmallow. It was depressing. It felt wrong. It was an insult to the memory of Dr. James Naismith. But I did it. For one solid week, I went out at 5:30 and sadly puffed my foam marshmallow at my $150 hoop. I hated every second. I hated the ball. I hated the hoop. But most of all, I hated her. Because I was being a good neighbor. I was playing by the rules. I had eliminated the noise. I had won. This, it turns out, was my critical mistake. I had assumed the problem was the noise. The foam ball was silent. It made no thump. It made no swish. So she changed tactics. A new letter. Laminated, of course. Subject: FW, Neighborhood Covenants. This time, it wasn't about the sound. It was about the visuals. It has come to my attention, it began, like a memo from HR, that the basketball structure is in violation of community aesthetic guidelines. She had attached a 10-page printout from a Neighborhood Covenants website. A quick Google search revealed it was for a gated community in Florida. We live in Ohio. The letter highlighted a section about non-permanent structures and recreational equipment being visually distracting. The foam ball was silent. So now the hoop itself was the problem. The goalposts hadn't just been moved, they'd been dismantled and shipped to another state. I was furious. I was vibrating with a specific kind of rage that only comes from dealing with someone who is aggressively and illogically unreasonable. I threw the foam ball into my garage. I grabbed my real ball. I went outside. Thump, thump, thump. It felt glorious. Then I called my friends. Dave, Steve, you guys busy? Want to come over and shoot some hoops? Dave and Steve are my work friends. They are, if possible, even more boring than I am. Dave is an auditor who wears socks with sandals unironically. Steve still uses a flip phone and brings a packed lunch to work every single day, usually a single unseasoned chicken breast and a bag of plain almonds. They came over. We were playing a sloppy game of 2-on-1. The action mostly consisted of us, arguing about new Excel formulas and missing layups. Dave, in the middle of a heated rant about VLOOKUP versus XLOOKUP, tried a dribble move, lost the ball, and it rolled into Karen's lawn. "I'll get it," I said, sighing. As I stepped onto her perfectly manicured grass, I heard a sound. It was distant, but growing closer. A siren. I froze. Dave and Steve froze. We looked at each other. "No," Steve whispered, clutching his almonds. "She wouldn't," Dave said. A police cruiser, lights flashing, pulled up to the curb. Karen called the cops. 2 officers got out. They looked exhausted. This was not a danger call. This was a "this is why I'm 3 years from retirement" call. The lead officer, whose name tag read Johnson, sighed so hard his mustache moved. "Afternoon, folks. We got a call about a gang-related disturbance." I looked at Dave, who was wearing a Taxman t-shirt, and again, socks with sandals. I looked at Steve, who was wiping ball sweat off his flip phone. "A gang?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Officer, this is Dave. He's an auditor. The most dangerous thing he's auditing right now is my weak left-hand dribble. This is Steve. He's afraid of gluten." "Sir," Officer Johnson said, pinching the bridge of his nose, "they're being aggressive, and it's a nuisance." A voice shrieked from across the street. It was Karen, on her porch, phone in hand, filming us. The second officer, Miller, looked at Karen, then back at us. "Ma'am," he yelled, "they're just playing basketball." "They're shouting," she yelled back. We were shouting about whether a pivot table could handle conditional formatting. Officer Johnson walked over to me. He lowered his voice. "Look, man, you're clearly not a gang. You're not breaking any laws. It's 2 p.m. on a Saturday, but just try to keep it down? Maybe?" "Keep what down?" I snapped, my patience finally gone. "The bouncing? It's 2 p.m. She's the one harassing us. She's been leaving laminated letters. She called you about basketball." Johnson just held up a hand. "I get it. Trust me. I get it. Just try not to, look aggressive." He looked at Dave's socks. Maybe. The cops got back in their car and drove off. Dave and Steve looked like they'd just survived a hostage situation. I think I'm gonna go home, Steve said, his voice shaky. My wife, we're trying a new casserole. They left. I was alone again. I was furious. I had been polite, I had been compliant, I had bought a whisper net and a marshmallow ball. And in return, I'd been labeled a gangbanger and had the cops called on me. Fine, I said to the empty driveway. She hates the hoop? She hates the noise? She hates the visuals? Fine. I went inside. I cracked a beer. I turned on the TV. A football game was on. The quarterback threw a touchdown, and the stadium went wild. They showed a replay on the giant stadium screen. The Jumbotron. I stared at the screen. The beer stopped halfway to my mouth. Internal monologue. A Jumbotron. It's not a hoop. It's not noisy. It's just loud. It's definitely an eyesore, but a legal one. A glorious 20-foot, high-definition, spite-fueled, legal one. She wanted a show? I'll give her a show. My weekend was a blur. I didn't mow the lawn. I didn't pay my bills. I fell into a deep, obsessive, beautiful rabbit hole. My laptop screen glowed until 3 a.m. both nights. My search history looked like a cry for help. Used high school scoreboard for sale. Daktronics financing options. Residential Jumbotron installation. How much concrete to hold 10,000 pounds hoops? Minor league baseball teams that went bankrupt 2023. I learned things. I learned about pixel pitch, the distance between LEDs. Smaller is better. I learned about NITS, a measure of brightness. I wanted all of them. All the NITs. I learned that a used 20-foot screen from a defunct arena football team was, shockingly, almost affordable. Well, affordable in the sense that I wouldn't have to sell a kidney, but my 401k was going to take a hit. I found it, a company in Pennsylvania that liquidates stadium equipment. They had a 20 by 12-foot video board from a Class A baseball team that had gone under. The Peoria Pipsqueaks or something. It was described as used, good condition. All panels functional. Controller unit included. I emailed them. I negotiated. Accountant, remember? I got them to throw in the mounting brackets. I clicked buy. The confirmation email hit my inbox with a terrifying finality. Thank you for your purchase. Your 4,800 leases digital media display will be freight shipped to your residence in 4 to 6 weeks. I had just bought a Jumbotron. Now I just had to, install it. In my backyard. This was not a DIY project. This was a call a professional and try to sound sane project. I called Steve. Not accounting Steve. Contractor Steve. He was a big, beefy guy with a beard who had rebuilt my deck last summer and had only mildly judged me for asking if the wood came in taupe. Hey, Steve, it's Mike, from over on Glendale. Got a new project for you. Hey, Mike, great. His voice was cheerful. Another deck? A patio? You finally want that pergola? Sort of, I said, pacing my kitchen. I need you to pour a substantial concrete foundation in my backyard. A very substantial one. And also I need access to a commercial crane, like a 50-tonner. There was a long, long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear him breathing. I think he might have put his cigarette out. A foundation. For what, a guest house? A bomb shelter? A Jumbotron. The silence this time was even longer. It was a deep, profound silence. The kind of silence that makes you check if the call dropped. A what now? A Jumbotron, I said, faster this time, like ripping off a Band-Aid. You know, like at the ballpark, a stadium screen. I'm buying a used one from a minor. League team that went bankrupt. It's a 20 by 12 footer. Needs a steel beam support system. The manual says the foundation needs to be, let's see here, 10 feet deep and rated for 4,000 psi. Mike, he said slowly, you live in Glendale. You know that, right? Your yard is half an acre. You share a fence with a guy who, I think, raises ornamental chickens. Exactly. Plenty of room. Look, Steve, the point is, can you do it? The seller is handling the screen itself. I just need the base, the support structure, a base that can withstand, and I'm quoting the manual here, a small hurricane and large birds. Steve sighed. It was a deep, world-weary sigh. But then, I heard a little chuckle. It was a dry, rusty sound. This is about that lady next door, isn't it? The one who complained about my circular saw at 10 a.m.? This is about my personal viewing pleasure, Steve, I said, with as much dignity as I could muster. And my desire to watch home movies in stunning high definition. And yes, it's 100% about her. The chuckle turned into a full-on laugh. A Jumbotron. You're a madman, Mike. A 20-foot TV in your yard. He took a deep breath. You're going to need permits. A lot of permits. Zoning, electrical. My God, the electrical. You're going to need a 200-amp sub-panel just for the screen. I've already got the spec sheets, I said, and I've been reading the city code. You have? Section 4, subsection B. Accessory structures. As long as it's 10 feet from the property line and under 30 feet tall, it's classified the same as a gazebo or a large satellite dish. Steve was quiet again. You've really thought this through. I'm an accountant, Steve. It's what I do. I'll get my engineer to draw something up, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. I have to. This is the stupidest, most beautiful, most American thing I've ever heard of. I'm in. But you're buying the beer, all of it. The next 2 weeks were a blur of bureaucracy. Steve's engineer, a woman who looked like she'd rather be designing bridges and who refused to make eye contact with me, drew up the plans. They involved 2 massive I-beams and a concrete pad the size of my living room. Then I went to the city. I put on my best suburban dad outfit, khakis, a blue polo shirt. I walked into the city planning office at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, when I knew they'd be sleepy. I got a clerk who looked like she was 19 and hated her life. Hi, I said, smiling. I'd like to file a permit for an accessory media structure. This was the term Steve and I had invented. It sounded just boring and official enough to work. She typed it into her computer. Accessory, media, structure? That's right, I said, pulling out the engineering plans. For, outdoor movies, for the family. We're big movie people. She looked at the plans. Her eyes glazed over at the words steel beam support and 10-yard on concrete pour. This is big, she said. Well, I want it to be safe, I said, leaning in conspiratorially. For the kids. My kids. I don't have kids. And it's 28 feet tall? Gotta clear the trees, I said, nodding sagely, as if this was a common problem. You know how it is. You get behind a big oak, your whole picture is ruined. I guess? She looked through her binder. She found the accessory structure page. She read it. She looked at my plans. She read it again. Is it a commercial sign? She asked, her one moment of suspicion. Oh, heavens, no, I said, feigning shock. Strictly residential. Like a, like a really, really robust television for, you know, my daughter's, ballet recitals. She's very good. That seemed to do it. She stamped the first form. Okay, you'll need an electrical permit for the sub-panel. Got the application right here, I said, sliding it over. And the zoning variance for already filled out. Meets the 10-foot setback. She looked at my stack of perfectly filled out paperwork. She looked at the clock. It was almost 11, which was almost lunch. She sighed. And she stamped. She stamped everything. Okay, Mr. She looked at the form. Okay, Mike, you're approved. Just post the permit in your front yard. Will do, I said, my voice calm, even as my heart tried to hammer its way out of my chest. Thank you for all your help. I walked out of that office holding a stack of approved permits that were, for all intents and purposes, a declaration of nuclear war. Karen had no idea. She was probably at home, laminating a complaint about a neighbor's wind chimes. The trucks were coming. The day arrived. It was a beautiful, sunny, cloudless Thursday. A perfect day for raising a monument to spite. It started with the sound. At 8:03 a.m., the entire neighborhood was jolted awake by the beep, beep, beep of a very, very large truck reversing, followed by the pneumatic HSSSS of air brakes. I was already on my porch, coffee in hand. A massive flatbed truck, the kind you see hauling bulldozers, was attempting to navigate our quiet suburban street. On its bed, covered in a blue tarp, was a shape the size of a Ford Explorer. Following it was a second truck, this one with a massive folded crane arm. Neighbors, confused and blurry-eyed, started emerging from their houses in bathrobes. Mr. Henderson from across the street, who was 70 and perpetually watering his roses, just stopped. His hose went limp in his hand. Steve's team was already there. His guys, all of whom looked like they could bench press my car, were gathered around the massive roped-off square in my backyard. For the past week, we'd been telling everyone it was a koi pond installation. The massive 10-foot-deep hole filled with a web of rebar and, as of yesterday, 10,000 pounds of cured concrete should have been a clue. And then she appeared. Karen. She came out on her porch, coffee mug in hand, wearing her pink magenta tracksuit. She had a look on her face. It was smug. She looked at the trucks, at the commotion, at me. She smiled. She thought I was being forced to remove the basketball hoop. She thought her laminated letters and her cop calling had finally worked. She thought she had won. She raised her coffee mug to me in a little cheers, her face a mask of triumphant condescension. Oh, this was going to be so much better than I'd even imagined. I just smiled back and took a sip of my coffee. The crane truck positioned itself on the street, deploying its outriggers with hydraulic thunks that shook the pavement. The crew unstrapped the tarp from the flatbed. And then the lift began. The crane's engine whined, the arm extended, and the heavy-duty straps were attached to the object. Slowly, slowly, the crane lifted the massive black thing off the truck. It was bigger than my garage. It rose up, over the roof of my house, a giant black rectangle against the blue sky. It blotted out the sun. A shadow fell over my yard, and then over her yard, over her prize-winning, meticulously cared-for petunias. I watched her face. The smug smile froze. The coffee mug stalled halfway to her mouth. Her brain, you could see it buffering, trying to process the data. Truck, crane, big, black, square, and then it clicked. The coffee mug just dropped. It fell from her limp fingers and shattered on her perfect brick porch, splashing lukewarm coffee all over her white sneakers. Her face went through the 5 stages of grief in about 4 seconds. Denial, blinking, shaking her head. That can't be. Anger, face turning a shade of red that clashed horribly with her tracksuit. Mouth opening, but no sound coming out. Bargaining, looking up at the sky, probably wondering if she could appeal to God, the city, the UN. Depression, a sudden, total slump of the shoulders. A look of existential defeat. Rage. And we're back to rage. Pure, unadulterated, apoplectic rage. Her face contorted into a silent shriek. "What?" The shriek was no longer silent. "What is that?" The crew in my backyard, guided by Steve, motioned to the crane operator. The massive screen was lowered, inch by inch, onto the 2 giant steel I-beams that were now sticking out of the concrete slab. There was a clang as metal met metal, a sound that echoed down the entire street. "You can't do that!" she shrieked. I just heard a distant beep-boop sound. She was, of course, calling the cops. Again. I heard the sirens within 5 minutes. She must have them on speed dial. The same cruiser. Johnson and Miller. They pulled up, got out, and just stared. They stared at the 20 by 12-foot screen now looming over my backyard. They stared at the crane. They stared at Karen, who was now on my lawn, vibrating. "This is illegal!" she was screaming at Steve's crew, who were busy bolting the screen to the beams. "You have to stop him! It's a billboard! He's running a business! This is a residence!" Officer Johnson looked at me. I was still on my porch, enjoying my coffee. He just looked so tired. He looked like he'd seen everything. And this was somehow more. "Morning, officers," I said, giving a polite little wave. "Beautiful day, isn't it? Just installing my new TV. Bit of an upgrade from the 55-inch. Officer Miller, the younger one, actually coughed to cover a laugh. Johnson just glared at him. "Sir," Johnson said, walking up to my porch. What is this? You can't just—" "It's all good, officer," I said cheerfully. I reached behind my mailbox where I'd left the folder. "Got the permits right here." I handed him the folder. And on the very top, in its own protective sleeve, was the pièce de résistance. I had laminated the building permit. Johnson took it from me. He stared at the lamination. He looked at me. I just smiled. He read the permit. He read it again. He looked at the giant thing in my yard, then back at the paper. "An accessory media structure?" "That's right," I said. "For my daughter's ballet recitals." But it's gigantic!" Karen shrieked, her voice cracking. Officer Johnson sighed. He walked over to his partner. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I saw Miller unfold the engineering plans. I saw Johnson point at the city-approved stamp. I saw Miller look at the setback measurements on the plan, then pace off the distance from the screen to the fence. He came back and shrugged. Johnson pinched the bridge of his nose. He walked over to Karen. "Ma'am, Mrs. Barbara." "It's Ms." "Okay, ma'am," he said, his voice devoid of all life. "I've reviewed the permits." It's approved. It's an accessory media structure. It meets the setback requirements. It's to code. But it's illegal. No, ma'am. It's apparently legal. There is, and I cannot believe I'm saying this, literally nothing we can do. It's his property. It's a structure. Karen just stood there, her mouth opening and closing, making little goldfish sounds. She had been so thoroughly, completely, and bureaucratically defeated. She had lived by the code, and now she was going to die by the code. The crane arm retracted. The trucks packed up. Steve's crew started running the massive, thumb-thick electrical conduit. Officer Johnson turned to leave. He stopped, looked at me, and just shook his head. "Try to, he said, gesturing to the 240-square-foot screen. "Keep the light pollution down." "Will do, officer," I said, giving him a salute. "Safety first." They left. Steve came over, wiping grease from his hands. "Well," he said, staring up at the screen. "It's up." "It's beautiful, Steve," I said, a tear almost in my eye. "You're a sick, sick man, Mike." "You're getting a very big Christmas bonus, Steve." He nodded, satisfied. "I'll have the electricians finish the hookup by 5. She's all yours." The hookup was complete by 4:58 p.m. The sun was beginning to dip. A crowd had gathered. It wasn't just my street. People from other streets had heard. There were at least 30 people on the sidewalk, all staring at the giant, blank, black rectangle in my backyard. Mr. Henderson had brought a lawn chair. Dave and Steve, the accountants, were there, looking pale and awestruck, clutching a 6-pack of light beer like it was a life raft. Karen was, of course, on her porch, staring. She hadn't moved in hours. She was just staring. I was in my living room, at my laptop. The control unit was hooked up to my Wi-Fi. I had a file ready to go. I took a deep breath. I clicked play. A low whir sound started up. It was the sound of 40 high-powered cooling fans kicking in. The entire neighborhood held its breath. And then light. It wasn't just bright. It was daylight. It was second sun has risen bright. My entire yard, her entire yard, the street, the trees, everything was bathed in a brilliant, beautiful 6,000 nit glow. The crowd on the street actually oohed. And what was the first thing I played? A 10-hour 4K resolution loop of the Yule log, in the middle of a 90-degree July evening. I walked outside, beer in hand, to admire my work. The giant, crackling fire lit up the entire neighborhood. It was magnificent. It was absurd. I looked over at Karen. She was just confused. Her rage had been replaced by a profound, baffled stillness. She was trying to understand why. Why a fire? After about an hour of the Yule log, I switched it up. I put on a 4K drone video of a serene, calming beach in Hawaii. Gentle waves. Palm trees. It was beautiful. "This is actually really nice, Mike," Mr. Henderson yelled from his lawn chair. "Thanks, Jim," I yelled back. Then, for the main event, I hooked up my old Nintendo 64. My friends Dave and Steve came into the yard. I handed them controllers. I fired up Mario Kart. The screen flickered, then showed the character select screen. Mario, 20 feet tall, stared blankly at us. "Why, who?" The sound from the two massive stadium speakers I'd mounted on the beams boomed across the subdivision. It was so loud. "I call Yoshi!" Dave screamed, his voice cracking with a joy I hadn't heard from him, ever. We played Mario Kart on a 20-foot Jumbotron. The entire neighborhood watched. People were cheering when I hit Steve with a red shell. It was community. This, of course, was day one. The war was not over. Karen had just regrouped. The next day, a laminated letter. Subject, noise ordinance violation. She was right. The speakers were a lot. So I adapted. I went on Amazon. I bought a low-power FM transmitter, the exact kind they use for drive-in movie theaters. That Friday, I put a little sign in my front yard. It was a professional plastic A-frame, the kind a realtor uses. "Welcome to movie, night at Mike's," it read. "Tonight, Jurassic Park, 1993. Tune your car radio or portable boom box to 88.5 FM for audio." That night, my street looked like a scene from Field of Dreams. People were parked in their cars, facing my house. Neighbors were in their front yards, sitting in lawn chairs with little radios. And my Jumbotron, it was playing Jurassic Park. Silently. The only sounds were the crickets and the collective gasp from 30 people when the T-Rex showed up. I had created a silent disco drive-in movie theater, fueled entirely by spite. Karen was furious. The noise was gone. But the light. New letter. Subject, light trespass. She wasn't wrong. It was shining right in her bedroom window. She claimed it was disrupting her sleep, though I was pretty sure she never slept, but instead just powered down in a closet like a robot. I had to be a good neighbor. I called Steve. "Steve, it's Mike. I need an addition to the structure." "An addition," Steve said. His voice was flat. He was beyond surprise. "Let me guess. You want to add a second screen, on top of the first one?" "No, nothing like that. I need a light shield for my neighbor's privacy." "A what?" "A giant, retractable black tarp. On her side. You know, on a motorized track, so I can block the light from hitting her house. It's the right thing to do." Steve was quiet for a second. "So, you want me to build a 20-foot wide, 12-foot tall motorized curtain on the side of your Jumbotron?" "A light shield, Steve, for privacy." "Yeah, okay. Why not?" He built it. It was frankly an engineering marvel, and it was 10 times uglier than the Jumbotron itself. It was a massive, looming black rectangle that now permanently hovered over the property line. Even when the screen was off, this giant, ominous black tarp was just there. It made her side of the yard look like it was in permanent mourning. My fix had made the problem so much worse for her. My house became the hub. I hosted the Bachelor finale. My yard was full of people screaming, "He picked her?" I hosted the Super Bowl. My yard was full of people screaming, "They're not even trying to run the ball." I hosted Mario Kart tournaments. I hosted retro game nights. I became, accidentally, a community builder. People brought over potluck dinners. I knew more of my neighbors in those 2 months than I had in the previous 10 years. All because I was so committed to being petty. The climax. The final boss battle. It was a Saturday night. I was hosting the first ever Glendale Drive Halo tournament. We had 4 Xboxes networked, and I was using the Jumbotron as a quad split screen. 4 10-foot square games of Halo, combat evolved raging at once. The audio was being broadcast on 88.5 FM. The yard was packed. 30 people, a mix of neighbors and their kids, all gathered, radios on, cheering as Master Chief did his thing. The glow from the screen was immense. And then she appeared, Karen. She wasn't alone. She was marching across my lawn, and she had brought her. This new woman was the anti-Karen. She wasn't wearing a tracksuit. She was wearing a beige pantsuit. She had a severe haircut, glasses on a chain, and a clipboard. She looked like she audited other auditors. She looked like she invented lamination. Karen marched right up to my porch, pantsuit woman in tow. She pointed at the Jumbotron. "This is it," she announced to the woman. "This is the nuisance I've been documenting for weeks." Pantsuit woman looked at the Jumbotron. She looked at the 30-plus neighbors sitting peacefully in lawn chairs, having a great time. She looked at me, holding a controller and a beer. "Ma'am," Pantsuit woman said, her voice dry as dust. What exactly am I looking at?" "It's a violation," Karen said, her voice triumphant. She was consulting her notes. "It's a clear violation of community aesthetic standards, and it's a public nuisance. This committee has to shut it down." The pantsuit woman looked at her clipboard. "Ma'am, what committee?" "The Neighborhood Beautification Committee," Karen said. "I formed it last week. You're the investigator." I kid you not. She had invented an HOA and then recruited, or conned, this poor woman into being her one-woman enforcement squad. Pantsuit woman looked at Karen, and her face was a mask of professional, bureaucratic disdain. "Ma'am, this isn't a homeowners association. This is just a street. There are no community aesthetic standards to violate. There is no committee. I'm a notary from the public library. You paid me $50 to observe and document a property line dispute. This is just a man with a large television." Karen's face crumpled. But the standards, the aesthetics." Right at that moment, my friend Dave, from his lawn chair, holding a beer and a radio, yelled out without even looking away from the screen. "Shut up, Karen! Master Chief is about to win!" A few people snickered, then a few more. Within seconds, the entire crowd of 30 neighbors was laughing at her. The pantsuit woman just looked at Karen, shook her head, and said, "I'm billing you for the full hour." She turned, tucked her clipboard under her arm, and walked away. Karen was left standing alone, in the middle of my yard, illuminated by a 20-foot-tall Spartan in green armor teabagging another player. She didn't say a word. She just turned around. Her shoulders were slumped. The magenta tracksuit seemed duller. She walked across the lawn, back to her own house, and for the first time, she looked defeated. She went inside. The door clicked shut. The letters stopped. It was weird. The silence from her side of the property line was louder than the Jumbotron had ever been. The glares continued, of course, when she got her mail, but they were different. They were defeated. Less pure rage, more deep existential dread. The next weekend, I completed my project. I had one final touch. I went into my garage. I got my original 150er basketball hoop. I got my drill. I got 4 heavy-duty 1-inch lag bolts. I walked over to the massive 12-inch thick steel I-beam that was holding up the Jumbotron. I bolted the basketball hoop directly to the side of the Jumbotron's steel support beam. It was perfect. It was the cherry on top of the spite sundae. My new normal is pretty great. I'm the Jumbotron guy. My power bill is, well, it's criminal. It looks like a car payment. And I'm pretty sure I'm personally responsible for blinding a few migratory birds and confusing the local bat population. But my neighborhood has never been closer. I still go out at 5:30 p.m. in my boxers to shoot hoops. I bounce the ball. Thump, thump, thump. I take a shot. Clank. I'm still not very good. And on the Jumbotron 20 feet above me is a live feed of me shooting hoops, captured by a little webcam I set up. An instant replay, just for me. Like I said, I'm a simple man. I just wanted to shoot my basketball. And now I can. And Karen? She put her house on the market last week. Seems she's not a fan of the new neighborhood aesthetic. Shame.